In this video, I'm going to be discussing temporary supply shocks and how we can illustrate these temporary supply shocks in our graphs. Alright, so this example that I have drawn up right here, we have our x-axis labeled as y, which is our quantity or GDP, and then we have our y-axis labeled as p, which is going to be our price level. And first we have to start by drawing our short-run aggregate supply curve and our aggregate demand curve, which is this red one that slopes downwards. And then we have our long-run aggregate supply curve that's always vertical, which we need to remember. And then we have our equilibrium point right in the middle where it intersects with these three curves. And in this example demonstrates a negative supply shock, but there can also be positive supply shocks, which just shift our short-run aggregate supply in the other direction to begin with. But that's besides the point for this example. So a negative supply shock, which is demonstrated here, that occurs when there's some sort of shortage or something that would, an external event that would affect our supply. So in this example, let's say we've experienced an oil shortage, for example. Then we take our aggregate supply curve and shift it left due to this shortage, which is going to cause a new equilibrium point, a temporary equilibrium point because of this shortage, which causes our output or quantity to decrease, and it causes our price level to increase as demonstrated in the graph right here. And this is how we demonstrate it in the short run, because the long run aggregate supply curve won't follow this because of sticky input prices, because it takes a while for wages and such to adjust to situations like this. So then when we go to this next slide, what I've demonstrated here is what happens in the long run, because as we discussed earlier, this is just a temporary supply shock. Keyword temporary meaning that it's not always going to be this way. So as we left off on the last slide, this was our new equilibrium point, but because this shortage is just temporary, we're going to see another shift. And in this case, what we see our aggregate supply, which had shifted left. We see our short-run aggregate supply to shift back to the original point, which brings us back to our original quantity and original price level. And this happens when there's no government intervention that's been taken. These short-term shortages will always shift back to the original output and price level, which I've demonstrated here, showing E3, which is our equilibrium 3, because we started out here originally, then we shifted left, which created a second equilibrium, and now in the long run, we're back at our long run equilibrium, which I've now labeled E3, and you could also label this Y3 and P3 right here, just to symbolize that it's brought us back to our original point. So in summary, a temporary negative supply shock, for example, will shift the short-run aggregate supply curve to the left, which will raise prices and lower the output. But over time, the economy will correct itself automatically with no sort of intervention and shift our short-run aggregate supply back to the right.